I will share with you some ideas, some that may be very relevant to your challenges, some others perhaps not so much. I would say that bicycles are revolutionary machines because they construct equality. Equality when people meet in bicycles between poor and rich, between the children and the elderly. And I believe a city reflects a society's values. A city reflects a society's values. When you have cathedrals, for example, it reflects how religious it is, but also it constructs those values. A city that has great sidewalks and public spaces reflects respect for human dignity. And it constructs also respect for human dignity. To create this infrastructure that shows respect for human dignity constructs values. A city talks. Now, can we design a transport city, a transport system? I am invited often to work on transport systems in cities, and I say, I cannot tell you anything unless we know what kind of city you want. Because it's very different before we design a transport system if what you want is a city like Houston or Los Angeles full of highways, or rather one like Amsterdam, where almost half the population moves by bicycle. So before we know what kind of transport system to propose, we have to know what kind of city we want. But even before we know what kind of city we want, we almost have to know how do we want to live. Because really, a city is only a means to a way of life. When we are designing a city, what we really are doing is designing a way of life. So the question to you is, what kind of life? How would you like to live? And we'll go into some of these ideas. Again, a city is a means to a way of life. Now, happiness. Happiness is very difficult to define, impossible to measure, but what really is clear is that it's the only thing that really matters in life, regardless of how we define it. And one thing is that feeling inferior is one of the biggest obstacles to happiness. This is why for more than 2,000 years now, humans have been trying to construct more equalities. It's Greece, Rome, we don't have so much time. But clearly, cars are a means of social differentiation. You see the advertisement for cars, how they tell you, if you have this car, you are better than others, you are more powerful, you are richer. So people are better. Cars are a means of social differentiation, to show some are better and superior to others. Bicycles do exactly the opposite. If two people meet in bicycles, one next to each other, even if it's a $10,000 bicycle and the other one is a $20 bicycle, they meet as human beings, as equals, next to each other. It's a very different kind of society, the one you build if people move in cars or if people move by bicycle. I like to show this wonderful picture of planet Earth as a spaceship Earth where we all share, because I don't have time to explain all the reasons why, but the basic issue is that out of the whole universe, out of the whole planet, the only microscopic piece to which we have access is public pedestrian space in our city. Public pedestrian space. The rest, for example, for us Colombians, it's very difficult to go to most of the world because it's difficult to get visas as Colombians. We don't have a right to go to most of the world. And even in our country, everything is private property. If you go, you may even get killed. If you enter a private apartment, you may get killed. If you go into the street, you get killed as well. So, only piece of planet to which you have access without risk of getting killed or anything is public pedestrian space, sidewalks, bikeways, parks. In the 20th century, we made horrible mistakes in our human habitat. We've had cities for 5,000 years, but in the last 80 years, we made cities much more for cars mobility than for human well-being. We are only beginning to redress this mistake. What is wrong with our cities today? Well, basically, the human life is permanently threatened. I mean, you are always conscious that how you cross the street, a car may kill you, especially if you tell any people are threatened all over by cars, but not only here. You see, people will design cities for cars, but not for people. This shows that human beings are not as important as cars. You know, you see, this is infrastructure for people, infrastructure for cars. Different, no? But this is, if we tell a 3-year-old child anywhere in the planet today, watch out, a car, the child will jump in fright. And with a good reason, because there are tens of thousands of children killed by cars every year in the world. There are tens of thousands of children killed by cars every year in the world. Many in the United States too. This is not just in China or something. But the most amazing issue is not that this happens, but that we think this is normal. That this is progress. That this is the way societies are in modern life. Now, this was not always like this. This is like, of course, not on bicycles, but like in an ancient Chinese city for 5,000 years, people would walk in streets without any fear of getting killed. This fear of living surrounded by threats that may kill us. It's not just any threat, it's the threat of being killed. This is a very recent issue. This was not like this 100 years ago. We could survive all our lives inside our apartments and order everything by internet or something, by phone. The same way a bird survives inside a cage. But clearly the bird is happier if it has a cage the size of this auditorium, and happier still if it can fly free. In the same way, it's clearly we feel better if we have a 10 meter wide sidewalk than if we have a 2 meter wide sidewalk. It's not something I can prove mathematically. We could be meeting here, and this roof could be at this height, and we could be meeting and doing the same, but we would feel different in our heart. So much of the way a city should be, this is not something scientific or technical. There is no engineer who will tell you how wide a sidewalk should be or how wide a bikeway should be. It's something you feel in your soul, in your heart. And that's the way you are going to create the environment where you may be happier. I would propose that a city that is good for the most vulnerable citizens, such as children, the elderly, the handicapped, the poor, is good for everybody else. Children by themselves in a city are almost an indicator species that a city is good, that a city is good. The way if you find trout in a mountain creek, it shows that the water is good, has a lot of oxygen. If you have children by themselves in a city, shows it's a good city. Now, equality, let's go back to this. Clearly, we're not going to have income equality. Everybody realizes communism doesn't work and all this. But what kind of equality can we have today? I will just propose one thing. The first article in every constitution in the world, in the United States Constitution or in any constitution, says all citizens are equal before the law. That's not just poetry. If that's true, a citizen on a car has the same right to road space as one on a bicycle. A citizen, or for example, a bus with 80 passengers has a right to 80 times more road space than a car with one. Sometimes inequality is before our noses, and we don't see it because we are used to it. For example, only 80 years ago or 70 years ago, in the United States, African Americans had to get up in their seat in a bus and give it to a white person. And everybody thought this was normal and healthy. Less than 70 years ago, women could not vote for president in the United States. And it was not fascists who thought this was right. Everybody, good people, thought this was right. This was normal. Well, in the same way, today, things are so absurd, but they are before our noses and we don't see it. To have a traffic jam road without exclusive lanes for buses, I think is equally flagrant. Moreover, to have cars parked in a street without, and instead of having a protected bicycle lane, is equally absurd as having women not voting. But people are so used to this that they think this is normal. Most cities in the world give more space to park cars, not even to running cars, to park cars than to pedestrians and bicyclists. And we think this is normal. You know, these are issues, it does not take a PhD from MIT or any committee of 12-year-old children in 20 minutes will find out that the most efficient way to use scarce road space is exclusive lanes for buses. No, it doesn't take, but let's go quickly because I don't have much time. Now, I would say sidewalks are the most important element of the city's transport infrastructure. This is what you find in the third world. No respect for human beings, not even children. I would say what really makes a difference between advanced and backward cities are not subways, but quality sidewalks. And in a truly advanced society, protected bikeways. This is China, disaster, but in many American suburbs are like this, no sidewalks. They think it's very fancy, very sophisticated not to have sidewalks, you know? So they put this stupid sign, slow, children at play, you know? Now, in the developing world, cars park on sidewalks. I got my white hair first, not just because I was sold, but because I was mayor and I got cars off the sidewalks, you know. It was a very difficult battle. People used to tell me, Mayor, don't be so stubborn because there is enough space to park cars as well as to have people walk by. So we had to explain, look, sidewalks are not like streets. We think they are relatives of streets because they live next to each other, but sidewalks are not for getting from one place to another. Sidewalks are for playing, for talking, for kissing. Really, sidewalks are much closer relatives of parks or plazas than they are of streets. And to say that a sidewalk, there is enough space to park cars next to it and still for people to walk by is equivalent to saying that you can turn the main park or the main plaza in a city into an open-air parking lot so long as you leave enough space between cars for people to walk by. See, this is subjective concepts. Now, let's go quickly, we have time. This is the battle I had in Bogota, very difficult. We made big sidewalks then, we made a big sidewalks, a war with bikeways. Ideally, sidewalks should continue at grade at every intersection. Sidewalks in every city in Manhattan, sidewalks should continue at grade. And it should be cars that have to go up and down so that it's clear that the city is for humans, that these cars that are entering pedestrian space are not pedestrians entering the car space. Especially when you have bikeways, this is extremely important because otherwise cars turn quickly and they will hit bicyclists. This is even more crucial then. Now, in Bogota, we have some examples I show you. We closed about 120 kilometers, about 80 miles or so of main arteries. Bogota is an 8 million inhabitant city, very compact, very dense. And we close every Sunday, we close it during 7 hours, the main streets in Bogota, and we get 1.5 million people coming out every Sunday to ride bicycles, to jog, all this. The wonderful Secretary for Transport, Janet Sadiq Khan, who was in Bogota, look at this, she's implemented in a few days the summer streets here in Manhattan. I wish it was more often because Manhattan is perfect for that, but anyway, this is, no. But what is beautiful about this is not this is not for sports only. It's good for sports, of course, but I would say it's a ceremony reminding us that the city is for people. It's people reconquering the city for humans, from cars for a while. And it's so wonderful to be in the besides, it's always fun to do things that you are not allowed to do. You know? Most fun things you are not allowed to do. And then you, in the middle of the street, you have always been told, don't go into the street, don't go. And so all of this want to be there, you know. And you see the city, the buildings, without the noise, without the threat of cars, it's a totally different experience. Let's go quickly. We will organize this during one night a year. We get like 3 million people that night. It's really during Christmas. We also we voted by referendum. I asked people to vote in a referendum not to have cars one day a year. In a regular working day, a Thursday, the first Thursday of every February, and this 8 million inhabitant city works perfect. 99.9% of people go to work, to study, or things. It's an interesting exercise. We just had it last week, the last one. Now, let's go quickly. Now, bicycles are a serious matter and they need serious infrastructure, investment. If we want people to use bicycles, we need great infrastructure. And this is what happened in the Netherlands. This is in the Netherlands, for example. Now, parking, protected bicycles, bicycle ways. Now, the weather in Denmark or the Netherlands is cold and rainy. Yet more than 40% of the people use their bikes daily. Look at this weather, no? It's not exactly Los Angeles, no? You know? Why do people use more bicycles in Denmark or the Netherlands than in Spain or Italy, where the weather is much better? Because it's a much more egalitarian society. There's much more equality. A rich person or some important doesn't mind in the Netherlands going on a bicycle, but in Spain, of course, the rich person is too important to go in a bicycle. So again, bicycles reflect the equality of a society and construct equality as well. Now, see, this is the infrastructure they have. A university there in the Netherlands, everybody arrives by bicycle. Well, let's go quickly. This is a train station. Everybody arrives by bicycle. This is the parking lot, for example. Everybody goes to the movie by bicycle. You know, there's a movie theater there. Now, let's go quickly. I would say like a bay with sailboats. Even if you're not on one of these sailboats, the bay looks much more beautiful if it has sailboats. A city full of bicycles is also not only good for the environment, for health. It is beautiful, it is fun, it is sexy, you know? People on bicycles is much sexier than somebody in a car, you know, boring car there, you know? You can see each other. Look, you can even flirt on a bicycle. Of course, she doesn't pay attention, you know? We try our best, but no. Now, I think some new machines are amazing because, for example, some elderly people or in cities with hills or things, now electrically aided bicycles is an amazing machine that will change the planet cities. Of course, ideally, you should not have electrically aided bicycles, but maybe some long distances where when you are old or for whatever reason, the amazing thing about a good electrically aided bicycle is that it's not a motorcycle. You graduate how much effort you want to put into it. And iPods, of course, I know they say it's dangerous. I think it's fantastic. Riding a bicycle with an iPod is like flying low through the city, you know? It's just ecstasy, you know? So technology is helping bicycling to be more fun. In Bogota, we built, when I was mayor, before there was 1 inch of bikeways in New York or in London or in Paris. Before any of this was happening here, and I think we had some influence in, because of course there were bikeways in the Netherlands, in China, but not in London, not in New York, and we built 300 kilometers of bikeways. And this was very difficult. And this is what we are organizing. Why are you organized here? Why is it important that you are organized here? And not just simply each one rides his bicycle at home. Because there are many difficult political battles to be given, and only organized people can pressure politicians. Here we have, for example, a politician, an important politician, Diana Rina. And what I'm going to try to prove to you in the last 10 minutes that we have is we have 10 minutes, yeah? I'm gonna go quickly. I will go running, 5 minutes, whatever. We built 300 kilometers of protected bicycle ways in Bogota. And now we have 19% of the people, we had 0 bicyclists, 0, 12 years ago. Now we have, for every 3 people on a private car in Bogota, 1 is in a bicycle. And still that's very little, of course, because we need to go much more. But anyway, this is the kind of infrastructure that was built all over the place. But saving on public transport and using a bicycle saves between 15 and 40% of a low-income person in a developing country city. So this is very powerful social policy, just the money savings that you can have, besides the health and the environment and all this. But I would say a protected bicycle way is a symbol of democracy. It shows that a citizen on a $30 bicycle is equally important as one on a $30,000 car. It feels very important, of course, for example. Roads are not just for motor vehicles. Many people in Colombia or something, they go by donkey, or low-income people walk next to, but these highways are made only for cars, for, the children walking in these towns, and then the trucks going alongside, no sidewalks. So in the rural areas, people go to work by bicycle in Colombia. Of course, bicyclists get killed, like this one. This one got killed, and his friends are accompanying him. So this is, like, here again, we have a similar sign to the one in the suburbs says, slow, urban area. Of course, people get killed here all the time. Look, the infrastructure for cars and the infrastructure for people. This is lack of democracy. This is insufficient democracy. Environmental impact studies are required when you build a road. I think we should require also human impact studies, so that you make the infrastructure for people, for children. Like these roads, financed by the World Bank, for example, in India, they have 3 lanes for cars and all this. There are more people in bicycles, walking and all this, but still zero infrastructure for people, only for cars. Now, this is what we should have in every road, big or small, highways, everywhere. Quality sidewalks and protected bicycle paths are not cute architectural features. They are a right. I mean, today we know to have a sidewalk in New York is a right. If you get hit by a car in a place where there is not a sidewalk, you will sue government and get a lot of money. Now, are bicycle paths, protected bicycle paths, a right? I would say so, unless we think that only people with a motor vehicle have a right to mobility without the risk of getting killed. And for many people, the only possible individual mobility is a bicycle, not only low-income people. For example, young children who don't have a car yet. So I would say this is a right, and I think this is, in the future, this will have to be treated as a right. In every street, not here and there now. Let's go quickly. Do you think this is democracy at work? Now, often bicycles are not just the only they are the only possible of mobility. Look at this extreme poverty in Colombia, and still they have a bicycle. So, transport is a political issue. Who benefits? You invest in highways, but then you forget about this. You see, highways, and there's these people, zero bikeways. China. Who decided more street space should be given to parked cars and to pedestrians and bicycles? Did anybody vote? Did children vote? Was this a democratic decision? Get rid of these parked cars and do a nice protected bicycle way, at least in one side of the street. It's important to remember that parking is not a constitutional right. It's not in the Constitution. So if you get rid of parking and people go to the mayor, to the councilwoman, and say, where should we park? She can tell them, it's as if you ask me where you should put your food or your clothes. This is not my problem. This is a private issue. Government has no obligation to provide parking to anybody. In many cities, even they restrict parking even in private spaces, but let's go, not too enough. So this is... After here in New York, with all due respect to my friend Janet Sadiq Khan, after you have the political debate to do a bikeway, why do painted bikeways? This is useless, or almost useless. A bikeway which is not safe for a 9-year-old child is not a bikeway. You cannot do these painted bikeways because they don't protect anything. You may have 1,000 cars that are respectful, 2,000, 3, 1 million, but one car can kill you. One is enough to kill you. So you cannot have this kind of painted bikeways. This is a good beginning, but clearly that's not the way it should be. This is crazy. After you give the political battle. Now, while highways are the shortest way to go from A to B, When they design bikeways, they make them go all around. You know, bikeways also have to go the shortest way along the highway, if it's necessary. Let's go quickly because we don't have time. Cars, this is very, how cities were before cars. How cities were before cars. How much do we have? Where's going? The city, let's go. Look at these numbers. In 1907, 500 people were killed by cars in the US. In 1923, 15,500. In the 1920s, motor vehicles accidents in the United States killed more than 200,000 people because people were used to be in the street. This is a wonderful book by Peter Norton, I recommend. So, before in 1900, nobody was killed by cars. In the 1920s, more than 200,000 people, almost the same as all Americans killed in World War II, were killed by cars in the 1920s. No? Look what this, he says, streets were the playgrounds for most of the children, but in 1920s, street games were becoming a high-stakes gamble. In 1925, and only 1925, in the United States, cars and trucks killed about 7,000 children. So this is what happens when cars appear, you know? It's not so much progress always, you know? And let's go quickly. But towards the end of the 20th century, we realized we made a mess, and we began to correct, to give more people space to pedestrians all over the world. Here in New York, they have done these wonderful things, in Broadway, for example. Why not think different? Why not structure the part of the cities yet to be built around a pedestrian and bicycle-only street network, hundreds of miles long? How about a city with thousands of miles of pedestrian or bicycle highways? Let's go. JICA, the Japanese corporation, told the Colombians we should do an 8-lane highway here, and we did a 35-kilometer greenway through Bogota, which is a very dense city. And this is what we did, where they proposed an 8-lane highway. Tens of thousands of people use this. We don't have time to go into the details. There you go. And then it goes to the countryside. I mean, countryside, this is not in Bogota anymore, but it's an example of how the bikeway should go through the country, you know, beautiful tourism in the countryside in bikeways. In 3 years, we built more than 70 kilometers, about 50 miles of bicycle highways in Bogota. This is Porvenir Promenade, and I want to show, this most important part I want to show you is this, because this is what I think cities should be like in the future. Of course, we are extremely poor. We are 100 years behind the US, but this is the kind of infrastructure that you could have in any city in the world. Thousands of miles of bicycle highways. We built this where the city was only growing, and you see, it's a 50-meter wide. See when the city grows, you see the pedestrian highway going through there, bicycle and pedestrian only. No cars either here or here. It's just like a highway for pedestrians and bicycles. But this is so easy to do when you are creating a new city. It's nothing great. It's difficult to do it in New York already, but in a city that is going to be built, it's very easy. Now, we don't have time to go into this, but what I'm trying to show is that we pay the space for bicycles and pedestrians, and only after for cars. See this picture? It's a fancy street for pedestrian and bicycle, even underground cables. You don't know, horrible cables above. Pedestrian space, a park, bicycle space, and the cars in the mud. What we are telling people is that human beings are important, that you are no more important because they have a car. We are telling them you are important because you are a human being, a citizen. Now, this is the infrastructure. Very quickly, we finish. This is tens of thousands of people go to work by this thing every day. Now, let's go quickly. How would your quality of life improve if your house was near one of these infrastructure? Like, you know, this is an amazing, this life would change for anybody. How about a city crisscrossed by hundreds of kilometers of greenways? Why not think different and create a city with hundreds of kilometers of roads for buses and bicycles and pedestrian only? Like road only for buses. Imagine a new city where buses, or trams if you want, and then bicycles and pedestrians and only buses, for example. No cars, no noise. Like this is in Bogota downtown. We made a city just for buses and pedestrians and bicycles. Now, drainage canals can be wonderful for making infrastructure for bicycles and pedestrians. Now, this is the end. How will the future American city be like, where you young people are going to live? How will it be? I will tell you something that is amazing. You have heard that the developing countries will build many homes and houses over the next few years, but what you don't realize is that the United States will be almost like a developing country. I will give you some numbers. This is what we have in the US now. Of course, this is impossible for bicycling. Even if you have protected bikeways, where do you go? Where is the closest shop? I mean, what do you? Imagine you are here. You are going to buy some, maybe a candy at this shop in a bicycle. Where do you go? This is, this is, of course, if Bogota had this kind of structure, Bogota would be 20 times bigger than it is today with the same population. Of course, you would expend so much more energy. You cannot have public transport. Why do you have public transport in New York? Because it's compact, because it was spread out. You cannot have low-cost, high-frequency public transport. You cannot have bicycling. In order for good, sustainable transport to work, you need cities that are compact for buses or bicycles or taxis. Now, we don't have time to go into all of this, but the United States population, I will tell you, look at this, will increase from now 322 million today to 438 million in 2050. This is the US Census Bureau. This is not my creativity. United States Census Bureau. Now, we have 2.58 persons per household today. But now, let's assume we will be like Germany, because households are becoming smaller in the United States. So, with 2.2 persons, such as in Germany, just look at this. You need to build in the next 38 years in the United States, you need to build 74 million more homes in the United States. So 74 new million homes in the United States. So over the next 38 years, look at this. This is very important. Over the next 30 years, the United States needs to build more homes than all homes existing today in the United Kingdom, France, and Canada put together in less than 40 years. Why am I telling you this? Is finished? Do I have time? Okay, I am saying. Why am I telling you this? Because these could be totally different cities. You could do a totally different city. Totally, like you dream it. A dream, like a dream. Dream on, because it's possible to do anything. Cities only for public transport. Let's go quick. I think the greatest challenge in the United States is to turn the inner suburbs into high-density urban. You will have to demolish thousands of hectares of homes. You will have to demolish all of these things near downtown. Demolish houses and put up buildings and do giant parks, giant greenways. Demolish these things, not this. But this is density. This is not. Neither Hong Kong, neither the suburbs nor Hong Kong. A very possible city which does not yet exist. How about a city crisscrossed by hundreds of miles of greenways, pedestrian and bicycle-only promenades, bus and pedestrian-only roads, plus, of course, traditional streets with extra wide sidewalks and protected bicycle ways. Let's just imagine, like, for a second, imagine just Manhattan, just for a game. One street for cars, one for pedestrian only. One for cars, one for pedestrian only. An urban design like this. It's nothing genial. You don't have to be a genius. It's very simple. It doesn't cost anything. It's very low cost. It's just a matter now. Like in New York, in Manhattan, some big park going from one extreme of the other of the city, some green parks now, and then the pedestrian only. Let's go quickly, no time. Now, new cities only for pedestrian, no? Let's go quickly because we don't have time. Even where bicycles are supposed to give him priority, they are not. For example, this is, maybe you know, the Hudson River Park here. You know, they treat bicycles like cars. They put the bicycles next to the cars and they plant plants so they don't allow bicycles to see the water. You know, clearly, the architects who designed this, they don't ride bicycles. They don't like bicycles. You know, this is completely mad. I mean, they should allow bicycles to go next to the water, and they put a sign. Here next to the water, bicycles have to go walking speed. But of course, most people reach the water from far away, and once they have to dismount. What a boring thing. I mean, you can go in a bicycle almost as low as walking, but this is a there is always bias against bicycles, even in these pedestrian spaces. I think this is mad. The Hudson River Park designer clearly was not a bicyclist, you know. Even though it's a wonderful park, this is what they do, you know. They put bicycles next to the cars, and they don't allow them to see the water. This is supposedly bicycle-friendly design. Now, and then many areas were only for pedestrians, no bicycles. Anyway, let's go quick. Now here, 2 blocks from where we are, Janet Sadiq Khan took cars out of one side of 10th Street to put a bikeway. And so a council member from the borough here told me 3 days ago, there was an outcry by the neighbors. So they allowed cars to be parked again and no protected bikeway there. Who decided this? Who voted? I will tell you. This is, in my opinion, with all respect to the United States, is totally undemocratic, this concept that neighbors have more right over public space near them than people who live far away. I believe, for example, to Central Park, some person who lives in a $20 million apartment on Central Park has no more right to Central Park than the poorest child in the farthest neighborhood of the Bronx. Public space belongs equally to all citizens, not anymore to the one who is a neighbor. In another battle, in Park Slope, other rich neighbors made a big fuss also about putting a bikeway here in New York, because this is completely undemocratic. I mean, why don't we vote to see how to distribute this road space? But what I am trying to emphasize to you is that all of these issues are political. It's not who is right or who is wrong. It's who has the capacity to pressure more, to get more votes, to elect more people like Diana or whoever is supporting these issues. This is the way the world changes, unfortunately. You have to participate in politics somehow. Now, let's go quickly. So at the end, this is the end. The main issue basically is, how should a good city look? The most valuable resource a city has is road space, the space between buildings. We could find diamonds or oil or gold under New York, and it would not be as valuable as road space. The question is, how to distribute this road space between pedestrians, bicyclists, public transport, and cars. There is not a technical solution. It's not like you call a transport engineer and ask them. No, this is a political decision. Here, for example, look at this street in central London. You see, it's much more space for pedestrians than for motor vehicles. And even motor vehicles only has a bus and a taxi. Do you think it's because the mayor of London asked some transport engineer for permission? No, this is a political decision. The same way we have to get rid of these cars parked along Manhattan streets and make big protected bikeways because of a political decision. And this is a battle. This is the challenge for you, and all of you who come from other cities, your challenge in your own cities. So, if you want a more bicycle-friendly world, it will not be the result of technical or academic analysis, as valuable as they are, but of political pressures and decisions. Therefore, my invitation to all of you, and I'm sorry for taking so long, get organized and participate and pressure for a more humane and more bicycle-friendly human environment. Thank you.